ジャギ様から盗み取った北斗神拳、とくと味合わせてやるわ。
Hi everybody, welcome to the video. My name is Midway and today we're going to be going over some of the most recent class changes as well as tier set changes that have happened over at the Dragonflight beta for us Holy Paladins. And on the background we'll have some footage from the most recent Mythic Plus testing over at the beta as well, where we are playing some Holy Paladin, some good old melee Holy Paladins. So before we get into it, please like this video and drop a sub. We are really close to getting to 2,000 and I love if we can do it before Dragonflight. I'm sure we can do that though. So yeah, that's it, and let's get into the video. Firstly, I want to be talking about the new tier set for Holy Paladin that was shortly changed after I uploaded the last video, and now it's going to be reading as follows. So the two sets going to be Holy Shock increases the critical strike chance of your spells by 4% for the next 10 seconds. So you can keep this buff up 100% of the time, since the cooldown of Holy Shock is always going to be shorter than 10 seconds. And altogether, this buff is going to be giving us about 2.7 to 3% increased power as a whole to Holy Paladins. Now on top of that, the 4 sets going to be doing the following. Holy Light, Flash of Light, Light of Dawn, and Word of Glory have 6% increased healing forever, that's just the baseline. And whenever those spells critical strike, we are going to be getting a buff to our Holy Shock. So the next Holy Shock we do is going to be doing 200% increased healing or damage, depending of course on what we use the Holy Shock for. So that's quite a versatile 4 set, since we can also use this with Divine Toll for a little bit more damage. I'm not sure if it's going to be buffing every single one of your Holy Shocks, but instead it's really just going to be allowing you to also use this tier set for a bit more of an offensive use, which is going to be quite handy for Mythic Plus. Finally, a bit of a tier set that's not just straight up more wings like we used to have in Shadowlands. So not a very exciting tier set, since it doesn't change the way we're going to be playing, and altogether is going to be giving us about an 8.55%. That's what's being calculated by the theory crafter, so we're a wowhead. That's going to be the increase in power that we're going to be getting from this tier set. So not too bad, but not the greatest. Possibly not that strong when you compare it to other tier sets, but I don't really know what the other tier sets are looking like. So let's just call it that it's okay, I guess. Now, on another note, we also have a bunch of class changes, some nerfs, some buffs, and we'll look into them. So first of all, and the biggest one probably is the change to Awakening. From it now goes down from 10-second wings procs down to 8-second wings procs. So that's a 20% nerf to the power of Awakening. It's still very much a mandatory pick, I would say. However, this is just once again attacking at the wings value, or rather in this case the uptime of wings for us Holy Paladins. And that also compounds once again with the changes to wings that we've been having over time, namely wings rank 3 being taken away in Shadowlands. That is 10% increased healing and damage that we no longer have. I believe it also buffed our critical strike, so that's now gone. We have a little bit of less wings uptime. So they also changed the power of the Silver Hand to from 1 proc per minute to 2 procs per minute. They also actually fixed this, I do believe. I haven't tested it actually, but I do believe this is now working. Yeah, it's just a little bit more procs. I do believe, or rather I do remember, whenever this was procking 100% of the time, it just felt quite busted, and we would have been using this in some scenarios, but I don't really know. Maybe caster builds in raid would benefit from this. I do believe they will. Save Vitalite has been doubled in power. Now this talent was absolute garbage, and I do believe still garbage. Could potentially be a little bit better now, but what it does is that it applies an absorb shield, and oftentimes this absorb shield does not get consumed. It does depend a lot on what kind of damage patterns you are experiencing, but you need to go down or below 30% HP, right? So that doesn't happen all that often, and if you pair these together with something like Beacon of Virtue, you could potentially get a little bit more value out of it, could make it even quite viable in some scenarios. It's been used in the past, don't get me wrong, and it also provides a little bit more of a valuable healing rather than Judgment of Light, where you just get some padding. But overall, the healing from Judgment of Light is always going to be way higher than the healing you can potentially get from Save Vitalite, and I do believe even or despite this buff is pretty much going to still be the case. But again, the value from the healing you could potentially get from Save Vitalite could potentially be much more impactful, since it could actually save somebody with that absorb shield. So it all depends on what kind of healing we're looking for and what scenario we are looking at. Now, a day after I recorded all of this, they came around with some more nerfs and some some buffs to Holy Paladin. Firstly, we have Light of Dawn being nerfed by 9%, a major nerf to Holy Paladin. And on top of that, they also nerfed Holy Shock by 9%. Both for damage and healing. So those are some major nerfs to some core spells of Holy Paladin. I don't really believe that they are warranted. Don't really know too much either, according to what I've been reading online, but if they do believe that that's warranted, then so be it. On top of that, there's also been a massive nerf to Judgement of Light. Now it's been cut in half. It's literally been cut in half the amount of throughput that it does. So that's a major hit for Holy Paladin in all forms of PvE content, since we did use a lot of Judgement of Light. And on top of that, to kind of make things up, they buffed Untempered Dedication by 2%. This is one of the new talents for Marats, already a conduit in Shadowlands. They implemented it into Dragonflight with only an 8% increase in the damage and healing from that of the Martyr per stack. Now it's up to 10%, just like it is in Shadowlands at the moment. And they also came with a buff to Empyrean Ward, a talent that nobody likes and probably everybody will feel bad whenever they use. They buffed it by 15%, so it's been double in the amount of armor that it gives to the target when you use Lay on Hands on them. Potentially useful in some scenarios, namely PvP, I'm thinking, but regardless, kind of lackluster. On top of the nerf to Awakening, there's also a bunch of nerfs to the overall damage a Holy Paladin can do now in Dragonflight. First of all, we have Divine Purpose being nerfed from increasing the dex, the damage and healing done from the free casts we get from Divine Purpose from 20% down to 15%, so that's a 5% reduction in the potential damage from a Shield of the Righteous or Light of Dawn, Word of Glory, whatever you want to be using it whenever we get a proc from Divine Purpose, so a little bit less throughput in that way, both healing and damage in this case. But then Judgement, the buff you get whenever you talent into it, whenever you throw a Judgement, the next Holy Shock or Crusader Strike would do a little bit more damage. That was 25% increased damage that it would do, now it's down to 20%, so not too much of a nerf, but still a little bit of throughput nerf. And in the same note, Seal of the Crusader has also been changed from rank 1, giving you 5% increase damage or holy damage down to the target, and rank 2 being 10%. Now it's down to 3 and 6% at ranks 1 and 2, which is a little bit of a nerf, quite a meaningful one, almost cutting it down by half, and once again nerfs to our throughput. On the same note, Mad Paragon, or what's now called as Zealot's Paragon, has also been nerfed by basically 50%. Now, whenever we throw a Judgement or a Hammer of Wrath, it's only extending the duration of wings by 0.5 seconds. Now, we also now have Judgement being in the mix, so we are still basically in the same spot, I would say, as before, but you now have to keep both those two spells in cooldown if you want to get the same juice out of Mad Paragon. Of course, Judgement is also doing 10% increased damage, but that's really cutting down a lot of the power of Holy Paladin, and these damage nerfs and whatever could potentially be fixed up in the future, but it really remains to be seen where we lay in terms of throughput versus other healers. And it's just looking like we are getting nerfs where we are not already shining too much. It does seem a little bit weird to me right now. There is more buffs and nerfs here that have been happening recently. One of those to Boundless Salvation, the talent that extends the duration of Tears Deliverance by quite a little bit. Now, this talent used to be absolute garbage, and it's been buffed, like this is probably the third time. Now, whenever you use a Flash of Light on a target with this buff, is going to be extending the buff by 2 seconds. It used to be 0.5 seconds, I believe, and whenever you use a Holy Light, now it's going to be extending the buff by 4 seconds. And you can get the buff capped all the way up to 40 seconds, and cannot go up any more than that. So those are quite some buffs. Are they going to be making this quite a choice? Probably in some scenarios, specifically PvP, I'm still thinking, but I don't really think you're going to be picking much of Tears Deliverance as of right now in PvE. Another buff to Moment of Compassion, making it so that whenever you cast some Flash of Lights on the beacon target, it's going to be getting 15% increased healing done onto the beacon target. That's quite decent for maybe PvP once again, maybe some panic healing in Mythic Plus, that could always be useful. And then we also have a buff to Resplendent Light, the talent that splashes some healing whenever you use a Holy Light. It's now going to increase the range of the splash from 8 yards to 12 yards. That's quite handy. I've been using this in Mythic Plus, and more often than not, whenever you use a Holy Light, it's simply not going to be hitting anybody or enough people because they're too far away, and that's quite lackluster when the healing spread is already not that powerful. Now, Tears Deliverance itself has also been buffed by a little bit. It's been straight up just buffed. The dot that it applies is now a little bit stronger, so that's that. And good old Barrier of Faith has been buffed once again, this time by around 7%. Also coming along with a buff to its duration, now being 24 seconds, but they also nerfed the cooldown of this spell, and it's now 30 seconds. You can still keep up this buff for a very long time. Now, they also changed several things to this spell. If you remember, they increased the amount of the absorb that you transfer when you heal with Flash of Light or Holy Light. They did double that at some point in the past, and they also made the initial heal from the application of the buff. They changed that into an absorb shield, so they are slowly but steadily building up this spell to be something that you will probably be picking up. Especially if you're going to be playing some sort of caster build. I think this is going to be quite a strong spell in PvP overall. Still think there's going to be quite limited usages in PvE though. Another thing that I kind of want to mention is that they now fixed the way that Sanctified Wrath works. It no longer does the Retribution Paladin effect that we showcased on the last video, where it just did a lot of damage in Mythic Plus. That's now gone, and it's working as intended for a Holy Paladin. It's simply reducing the cooldown of Holy Shock while you have wings active. So that's that. We have quite less damage after that nerf to that one thing. And that's quite unfortunate, but it was quite expected since it did not belong to the Holy Paladin kit. It would have been quite a double dip if it did both reduce the cooldown of Holy Shock and also give us a mad amount of damage. Anyways, I do kind of not really understand a lot of these changes. A lot of nerfs all over the place, and I'm just quite a bit oblivious at the moment of what the state of Holy Paladin really is when you compare it to other healers. I haven't really tested any other healers, nor have any time nor interest to do so, but I kind of want to see if really those nerfs are warranted enough. Are we really that strong? Are we really doing that much damage and healing? Is Wings uptime that much of a problem, or are they just tired of the way that Holy Paladin worked after the tier set in Shadowlands that we got? It was all just about having a lot of Wings uptime. Maybe they got tired of that. Not really sure. I wish I could try and understand those things. I'll look at the PTR testing and hopefully get myself into some of those sessions of PTR testing so we can actually get a bit of a grip of where we stand versus other healers. There was still quite some issues with the UI, with the mouse over macros, which some of them did get fixed, but I really don't know. They seem to be screwing up a lot of things as they are fixing others. The overall state of the beta at the moment just seems like it's a bit all over the place. Way too many bugs, way too many things that have not even been tested. We are a month and a half or so away from the release. The Prepatch should be coming sometime within the next weeks, couple weeks maybe, and there's still more than half the dungeons that need to be tested for Mythic Plus, so things are looking a little bit, I don't want to say green, but definitely would rather have a delay at this point. I would very much prefer if it was delayed by a couple months, but that's just my personal preference. I'm sure a lot of people just want to see the game shipped. As always, just want to be playing it as soon as possible, and then we get another beta for Azeroth where the game still remains quite unplayable for a couple months after release. I really hope it's not going to be the case, but at this point it does seem that, at least to me, this seems a little bit not a good state for a game to be in. Not that it's completely broken, but you know, if you are playing the beta right now, you could see that many things remain to be put in place. And I'm just looking at Holy Paladin and I'm seeing a lot of holes in the whole idea of you know, where they want to be having Holy Paladin stand, let alone other specs. There is a lot of other specs that are having quite some issues and should be getting a lot of work. But as Holy Paladin stands, if you are enjoying the melee playstyle in Shadowlands, you will be enjoying the melee playstyle in Dragonflight. Quite likely, there is going to be a little bit of a button bloat. That's just common for basically every spec right now in Dragonflight. It seems like we're getting another off. You could name it an unpruning. It's pretty much an unpruning although it's not just bringing back old stuff, it's bringing back very, very old stuff as well as some more recent old stuff. So it's a bit of a mix, but really, yeah, we're just getting a lot of buttons that could potentially be a bit overwhelming for some people, but I do not think that is too much the case for Holy Paladins. And there's also the showcase of Thundering, which we haven't talked about yet. So I'm sure you've been seeing back in the footage some of these linings happening, these swirlies in the ground. Those are part of the Thundering affix. That was still the case before, and that's still the case now. But after that, you know, we're getting these buffs. We get these buffs for a few seconds, and it works almost like Star Augur. Whenever you get the buff, you need to collide with, in this case, the opposite mark. You get either Thunder or you get Lightning, I think it is. And you gotta find the other one, not Thunder and Lightning, it's Wind and Lightning, whatever. But you just get this buff, damage and healing increased by 15% for a few seconds. And if you fail to collide with the opposite mark after the time of the buff expires, you're gonna be getting stunned by for 8 seconds, and it's not dispellable. You cannot dispel this stun. As it stands right now, this could very much be changed, and I do believe this could be changed, but so far, you know, I don't think it is too big of a deal, the fact you get stunned. Only 4 players do get the buff at a time. The unfortunate nature of this is that whenever somebody, you know, you get in combat and potentially somebody releases or they die with the buff, the remaining person with the buff will not have a partner. Let's say you die, you release, and the buffs come down, right? Everybody gets a buff. 4 people do get a buff, rather. Even if you are in Narnia really far away, you could potentially still get a buff. Or if you die with it, and then somebody would not be able to get rid of it, they would be getting stunned and not be able to get dispelled. And then they also take damage with the debuff, right? This damage could potentially scale with the key level. Not sure about that one, to be honest, but it is quite lethal on top of everything else happening. So yeah, that's something that I'm quite sure they're going to be changing and making it so that whenever you get stunned, you could be dispelled, and that's going to fix a lot of the problems. But yeah, there just seems to be a lot of clunky situations with this. Yep, now we're going to be approaching the last boss, at least in the way that I'm looking at the footage right now, and I don't know, I just like the way the whole thing plays. Not really too big of a fan of the Off Dusk and Dawn, the new talent. This one we gotta go from all the way to 5 holy power and then down to 0 holy power. Still taking quite a hard time just getting used to the flow of getting holy power, especially in Mythic Plus. I do believe this could potentially be a little bit more manageable in raiding, at least in situations where you're not desperate to be pumping out some healing immediately. But in Mythic Plus, this is very much the case in many scenarios, especially when you're learning stuff, and it just feels quite clunky going all the way to 5 holy power. Especially with this level of haste, we got about 20-something% haste. Now we are also capped, our gear is now capped, so I mean that we're getting scaled to a base of, I think it is 292, 296, so at least our secondary stats we are able to still be choosing those, but I do remain having a little bit of a lower amount of haste in this case, and the lag on top of things are just making, you know, it's just making everything a little bit too clunky. But regardless, yeah, the mana issues that I experienced were gone, at least in this case where we were not chain pulling all that much. So that's good. We also have new consumables in the PTR, so we're able to check those, and you just get those and actually have some way of regenerating mana while we are in Mythic Plus. And now we'll be looking at the breakdown right here. We are gonna be checking out the overalls, and we will see that the healing is quite interesting. The damage is just about what you would expect. Consecration on top. Glacial Fury still doing way too much damage. I do believe that's going to be nerfed. And the Sanctified Wrath amount of damage is now gone. So our overall is only 15.7, which is quite respectable, but I do believe it lays a little bit lower than something like a Resto Druid, but it would potentially still be very much respectable. The healing now is Word of Glory, Holy Shock, and Beacon of Light in the top. Holy Shock might have been nerfed a little bit with the tier set being changed, but otherwise I still think we are doing quite a bit of a respectable amount of healing. But regardless, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please drop a like in it if you did so, and subscribe, because we're getting to 2,000 subscribers probably before the next video, hopefully. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.